All right, everybody, welcome into KBO Chats Live. I'm Sam Pasco alongside Eric Halterman, and we are breaking down the best picks for tonight's KBO or this morning's KBO action. Eric, how are you doing right now? You got a brand new little rustic background feel. I'm liking it.
Yeah, I wish I could be here a little bit longer, and my vacation's wrapping up tomorrow. It seems like the league didn't shut down while I was off for a couple days, so that's good to know. I was worried they needed me to continue, but it seems like they don't. So that's always good to see. Assuming, of course, that Daniel Kim hasn't tweeted something out in the last 2 minutes that I missed, but seems like everything's still going about as well as it can. So very happy to see that.
Well, it's 2020, so you never know. Crazy updates coming left and right. I know I've been active on that South Korea COVID cases, which have been rising. So hopefully, everything will be under control. But I think it's going to have the games go on right now. It's at 2.5, so games are still going to be going as of right now. So yeah, we're breaking it down. We already get some people in here. Another great show here talking about everything. Some great starting pitchers on the matchup. And as always, comments are welcome talking about what you guys want to talk about. And we got a little question there at the bottom. Which KBO pitcher will have the most strikeouts? That might not be as easy as it seems because we have some great ones tonight. So diving in, I want to first start off with the league leading NC Dinos taking on the SK Wyverns. The Dinos actually aren't leading by much right now, just a half game. And they're looking to bounce back from their loss yesterday with Drew Rzinski now, who's now their ace with Chang Moku still down. Eric, how do you think about this Dinos team taking on what should be an easy win over the Wyverns?
Yeah, I think they need an easy matchup because things are pretty shaky there right now with Koo still out with that forearm issue, and Brzezinski, like you said, he is the ace, but he hasn't necessarily been ace-like recently. We'll see how much that matters against a team like the Wyverns that hasn't really hit well for most of the year. But it's three real bad starts in his last five from Brzezinski. I think it's 5 earned runs or more 3 times in the last 5. Of course, he did allow just about 1 in the other 2. But it's definitely not the performance we're used to seeing from him. 3 ERA and a 1.8 WHIP over his last 5. He'd only allowed more than 3 earned runs once in his first 14 starts of the year. So it's a completely different Rajinski that we've seen lately. Of course, some of those bad starts are against teams like the Bears and the Wiz, and that Giants blow up was during that middle of that awesome run by the Giants. But it's not what you want from a guy who's supposed to be your ace, or at least was the number 2 guy behind Koo for most of the year.
Yeah, it's definitely concerning when you want to see this Dinos team continue its strong start now that Kiwoom is looking like a serious contender. Brzezinski's 9 ERA over his last 3 starts is not going to cut it. But we'll see. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better matchup here to bounce back facing off against the Wyverns. But their offense has actually been quite strong. I posted a meme about them putting up double digits the other night. And that offense right there, no Tyler White, but yet they seem to be putting up double digits. What, 3 of the 4 nights here? I think this Wyverns team might be a little bit more of a challenge than Rzinski's expecting.
Yeah, they've had some talent in the heart of that order for a while. Of course, it's sad to see him lose Tyler White for about 3 weeks with a broken finger, it looks like. Just into his second game, and he doesn't yet have a KBO hit. But they have some good hitters. Jung Cha has OPS of 1334 with 4 homers in his last 9 games. Jamie Romack has a 1300 OPS in his last 8. Dong Min Han has a 1146 OPS in his last 10. So there's 3 very hot hitters in the heart of that order. And when they're putting up runs together, when they're knocking each other in, they can put up those big totals. Their overall run totals throughout the season have been pretty low for the Wyverns because they don't really have much after those guys. But given the way Rajinski's been lately, I wouldn't hate taking a shot on one of those guys. Dong Min Han would be the one who'd get the platoon advantage against him. But if Rajinski has another one of his blowups, Choi or Romack are perfectly acceptable, if risky flyers in this one, I would think.
Yeah, when we look at the Wyverns team page here on rotowire.com, the best resource for KBO info and stats, you see here 8 runs last night, 10 against the Tigers, who are supposed to be known for their pitching. They've had some question marks with Brooks recently and some other pitchers, but still impressive. 10 against the Giants, and of course, 26 against the Eagles not that long ago, back on the 19th. which like is not for nothing. Like you're saying, these guys have some impressive numbers, and with the way the Dinos have been performing recently, that over seems like a pretty good decision here. What are you thinking here? Josh is really liking the the run line on this Giants one as well, on this Dinos, and we'll talk about the Giants in a second. What do you think?
Yeah, I think good chance the Dinos put up some runs too. Even if Fraczynski does have a good game and keeps his side of the run total down, Jung-Hoon Park was actually on quite a good run. He had 8 starts in a row with 3 earned runs or less, but he got blown up by the Bears in his last start. On the season overall, he's a pretty high strikeout guy. 22.1% is about 4 ticks higher than league average there, even though it would be slightly below average in MLB. 22.1% is a strikeout arm for sure. It's above Drew Wyszynski, who's at 20.4%, who is a fine strikeout arm himself. But Park walks a ton of guys, 10.8% walk percentage. So it's decent chance we get a lot of base runners on. And the Dinos have that power. Sungbum Na, 7 homers in his last 11, a 14.47 OPS over that stretch. He seems like an awesome play with the platoon advantage against Park here. And the Dinos just have that depth to their lineup that not many teams have. Look, Aaron Altair, still an awesome hitter, still hitting 8th. Even when he's not at his best, they seem to have somebody stepping up most of the time. So I would expect them to put up plenty of runs. I think there's a chance that Drew Wyszynski does what he's supposed to, but even if he does, the Dinos could get a fair portion of that over out of the way on their own.
Yeah, you mentioned Aaron Altair, and we looked at this a little while ago, but he has 4 hits in his last 4 games, and he's batting 8th for this Dinos team, and you can see he's hit as high as, what is it, 3rd here? I think 2nd, maybe a little earlier in this year, but yet that depth is pretty incredible. For them to be able to put that guy so low in their lineup is really a testament to that depth. So you liking that over? I mean, you mentioned Park's strikeout numbers, which are a little concerning, but what do you think on that over, which is set at 10?
Yeah, I mean, he strikes guys out, but he walks a ton and gives up a ton of runs. And I don't think a lineup as good as the Dinos is going to have too much trouble with him. I think it's a pretty fair bet that they'll get most of the way themselves. And then you just either need Wyszynski to have one of the bad games he's had too many of lately, or you just need the Dinos bullpen to throw 2 or 3 innings, and the Wyverns could easily put up a few there. So I think it's pretty comfortable over. And I go with the Dinos too. There's definitely a path. Wyszynski has been blow-up prone of late, and the Wyverns have the bats in the heart of the order that could take advantage of that. But I think most of the time this game plays out in the Dinos' favor.
Yeah, Rosinski looking for his 13th win of the year. I believe he is the league leader in wins, so he's looking for that number. Unlucky 13 tonight against the Wyverns. So moving on, Josh mentioned the Giants, who we can move over to now. Just going to clear the page here. Giants, we got them facing off against the Hanwha Eagles with their ace, Dan Straley, on the bump, finally recovered from that horrible start 2 starts ago, recovered against the Lions, just 2 hits, 6 innings, looking like the ace, looking like the Dan Straley we know. I think he has less than 2 earned runs in 16 of his 20 starts. I mean, this should be another easy one, like Josh is saying here. Giants all the way?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if Straley had 2 bad starts in a row, you'd start to worry. I think you can forgive a guy 1 bad start every now and then. The weirdest thing about him is he's still never given up exactly 3 earned runs. I don't know. I don't think there's any reason for that, but it's either 2 or less, like you said, 16 of the 20 starts, and then 4 not great starts. I mean, that's only 1 out of every 5 is a struggle, which is maybe more than you expect for a guy whose ERA is that low, but that's because when he's on, he's been incredible. His 25.4% strikeout rate is best among qualified starters. I believe Cheng Mo Koo just now doesn't quite count as a qualified starter. He's been injured long enough. 6.8% walk percentage for Straley is also good. And he's second to Eric Jokic in both ERA and WHIP. So when he's on, he's good argument to be the best healthy starter in the league. And he's on more often than not, and I think he should be on against this Eagles team.
Yeah, and I think this Eagles team, though, it's not the complete, losing streak Eagles team that we saw earlier this year. They got 4-2 record in their last six. I mean, they're not the worst team. I mean, they're the worst team right now, but they're not the worst team we've ever seen. Is there any chance that they maybe give him a little trouble, or maybe he can get to that bullpen if he goes only 6 innings?
Yeah, I would consider them to be just a normal bad team at this point, but I don't think a normal bad team is going to give Straley all that much trouble. And he typically goes pretty deep. I guess maybe if he goes six, like you said. They did score 7 and 5 in their last two. They have a 6 and a 5 in the last few, but there's no real big numbers. They don't have the depth or the top end talent to really explode to huge numbers. Not that I would expect that at all to happen against Straley. They're not really getting what they want from Brandon Barnes. He hasn't been terrible, but definitely hasn't been a star. He battled a minor hamstring issue and has an OPS of just 505 in the 6 games since returning. So they didn't really import the star hitter right into the heart of their order that they needed to, really have a chance in games like this. So I would think Straley is by far has the easiest matchup and is the best pitcher on the slate. I think it would be quite a surprise if he has trouble with the Eagles here.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Barnes definitely not a Addison Russell type, kind of plug in and kind of energizes your entire lineup. That move was questionable when it was first announced. A guy with a lot of minor league experience, not too much at the major leagues in terms of even league average success that we see with Addison Russell when he was with the Cubs. So Eagles looking like they're going to lose tonight to the Giants. Do you think it hits that under easy because of Straley and because this Giants team has pretty much cooled back off from that really hot stretch a little while ago?
Baby, but Ewan Kim is very shaky. He's walked more guys than he struck out this year. Strikeout rate's only a couple ticks below league average, but he's walking 60.8%, which is double, if not more than double, league average walks. Everybody on base. He was demoted in early July. He just came back and had a decent 4-inning start against the Twins, but I don't think that's nearly enough to say he's completely solved things. But the Giants don't necessarily have the offense to explode for a big number, and given that, I would expect Straley to not give up more than 2 because he never even gives up 3 when he's on. I would think I would go with the under here, even though Kim is quite bad.
You're looking at 2 or less runs for Straley. In case you're just tuning in, this is KBO Chats Live. We are breaking down the entire KBO slate. We just talked about the Dinos, how we like the over there, and the Dinos on that money line over the SK Wyverns. Same thing. Another great pitcher, Dan Straley, going for the Giants against one of the worst teams in the KBO. That's just normal bad instead of exceptionally bad like we saw earlier this year. Moving on and actually specifically talking about specific numbers of earned runs, I want to jump down to the Samsung Lions in the Kiwoom Heroes game. We have David Buchanan, who at times looks like an absolute stud. Seems to have a lot of fun in the league, in the dugout with masks, bananas, everything. But then at times he can look like an absolute dud. Last time out was his first time giving up exactly 3 earned runs. We've seen an 8 spot twice. We've seen 10 runs. We've seen shutouts. But first time ever with exactly 3 runs. Eric, what are your thoughts on this David Buchanan character?
Right, I knew I'd seen that, never giving up 3 runs somewhere. That makes sense. Good call there with him. Yeah, it's his first mediocre start, though I guess looking at the hits allowed, it was maybe worse than mediocre. But he seems like a fun guy, fun teammate, and he's been pretty much what the Lions have needed in terms of runs allowed. His underlying numbers haven't been all that awesome. Strikeout rate of just 14.6% is several ticks below league average, but he doesn't walk a lot of guys. And he's been able to regularly pitch deep into games and let the defense do the work for him. And like you said, it's almost always been quite good with the occasional flare-up. Decent chance, though, that this is one of his bad starts because last time he faced these exact same heroes, he got absolutely blown up for 8 runs on 9 hits and 6 walks against just 1 strikeout in less than 5 innings, which I guess, good for him for going more than 4. That's just about the only positive thing you can say in that start. And we know he's capable of that. And there's some risk heading into this one in that he was scratched from his start Wednesday with a thumb issue. He didn't end up missing a full turn because it's just, 3 days later here. You got to assume that since they say he's good to go, he's good to go. But you can't help but be a little bit worried that adds some extra risk to a guy who is riskier than that ERA would suggest, given that when he's off, he's very off.
Yeah, some comments here. Comments are always welcome. Josh mentioning that Giant series we were just talking about, but talking about this Kiwoom and Samsung matchup here. I was for the show later, the KBO show coming out in a little bit. I also am predicting a David Buchanan kind of blow up here. The Heroes right there with the Dinos for that number 1 spot. Addison Russell had a career high night not that long ago in RBIs, and Han-Hee Han. He's not Eric Jokic, but he's not horrible. I mean, that ERA looks pretty bad. Here we got Joe here talking about and commenting about Han-Hee Han here. What are your thoughts on what's on the Kiwoom Heroes pitcher today?
Yeah, he's been all over the place. He's coming off 2 straight pretty bad starts, 9 runs in 9.2 innings, but then those followed 3 quite good ones. But then if you look at the 4 starts before that, it's 1 good one and 4 pretty bad ones, with 2 being absolutely horrible. That 2-start stretch to start July where he allowed 17 earned runs while getting just 3.2 total innings is got to be the worst 2-start stretch of the year. One of the worst 2-start stretches I've seen in baseball, period. So I would assume if you take those 2 out, his ERA looks a whole lot better, but not exactly good. He's been, like I said, inconsistent throughout the year. Though overall, it's more or less a league average strikeout rate with a 5.4% walk rate, which is pretty good. So there's something there. And the Lions don't have much offensively. So picking him for fantasy purposes, I don't hate, because when he's on, he's quite good. He's capable of big strikeout numbers, but he's also capable of the worst starts we've seen all year. So we don't really know what we're going to get out of him or Buchanan. It's 2 quite inconsistent guys. Buchanan on the whole, you'd expect better on average, but you'd expect a whole lot more from the Heroes lineup, which would have me lean their way for this one. But given that we don't know which pitcher we're going to get from either of those, there's certainly pass for a Lions victory here.
Yeah, I definitely think between Buchanan kind of being due for a bad start and that injury, you said, he's probably good to go, but I do worry that, he might not be 100%. And Han-Hee Han, not great numbers, but I mean, he did have a 10 strikeout game at home back on the 25th, as Joe mentioned. Pretty solid splits at home, and the Heroes are at home for this one. Offensively, the Kiwoom Heroes, are they a powerhouse? How have they been recently with Addison Russell and the whole crew?
Yeah, Russell has been fine. Russell hasn't necessarily been an absolute star. The offense sits 4th overall, which I think is a pretty fair reflection of what they've been. It's quite deep. But Jung-Hoo Lee has been out for last 2 games after fouling a ball off his foot. He's quite possibly the second best hitter in the league behind Mel Rojas Jr. At least he was by OPS for much of the year. If he's not ready to go, that's a big blow. Russell has fine numbers. I believe he's hitting over 300, but he still only has 1 homer. Might have expected a bit more power from him, but I don't think you can complain about what he's done so far. So they definitely have enough bats to trouble Buchanan. It's definitely not an easy start for him, not a comfortable fantasy play, but one that's maybe worth taking a risk on. But the Lions just have not had much at all. Ja-Wook Koo has been their best hitter for much of the year. He's got an OPS of 515 over his last 12 games. Daniel Palka does have a homer, but he only has 3 hits in his first 4, so it's not like he's getting off to an awesome start. So there's not a lot there. So I think they're going to need probably a good Buchanan start, which they usually get, but you just never know.
Is Min-Ho Kang on your radar at all? I see a little hit streak here. Of course, you can always check out who's doing good, who's doing bad on rotowire.com. But last 4 starts here, .385 average. Is he maybe someone, the Lions, if they don't get shut out, that maybe a run could come via a Kang bomb here?
Yeah, he's been one of my go-to catchers for quite a while for DFS purposes. He's really struggled for his first 30 or so games. Had an OPS of 656 when he went on the injured list in mid-June. I think it was a side injury. But he came back and was one of the best hitters in the league for an extended period. Cooled off for a bit for much of August, but it's still an OPS over 1,000 in 44 games since he returned from the injured list, which, I mean, that plays anywhere. That certainly plays at catcher. So he's sort of taken up the mantle with Jawaku falling off. So there's definitely something there. I think it's an easy enough matchup for him. I don't think Yan He-han should scare you away from Lions hitters. So definitely one of the better catcher plays for DFS purposes.
Yes, Han He-han, definitely not someone you want to target fantasy purposes in terms of starting that 6-6 ERA close to 6. Going to go Heroes here. The total is set at 9. Can the Heroes score that off Buchanan? I mean, I want to say no, but I think he'd get lit up tonight.
Yeah, 9 is pretty low. I think I would go over 9 because, again, either pitcher has blow-up potential. I think it's even though Buchanan's better, I think the Heroes lineup is enough better that I'm going to go with the Heroes. And I think it would be maybe a surprise if we got the best version of both pitchers here. Can't rule out a 2-to-1 pitchers duel, but I'm going to go Heroes and over.
Yeah, they both have that in them, but maybe not tonight, especially Buchanan facing that Kiwoom Heroes offense. So moving on to the KT Wiz Kia Tigers matchup. The Tigers offense woke up yesterday. I believe that was for 11 runs. Just closing out some tabs here. And I mean, they've been a disappointment overall. They've been falling in the standings, but they're 500 in their last 4 games. So here 11 against the Wyverns team, so they don't give them too much credit for that. But the KT Wiz, they have William Cuevas, who has a pretty good looking ERA, but maybe isn't as reflective of that. What do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, the Wiz had been on fire forever. I moved them all the way up into second in my power rankings, and they responded by losing 304 to start the week. So not a great showing from them. It's a small stretch, certainly a chance that they get back on track against the Tigers team that, like you said, they've been 500 over a small stretch lately, but they're still just 9-14 in August, knocking themselves outside the playoff picture as of right now. And they certainly don't have their best starter to get them back in it in this one in Ki-Hoon Kim. It's been mostly a reliever. He's had 2 short starts where he didn't go more than 4.1 innings and didn't do much in either of them, just a single strikeout and 4 walks, a total of 6 runs in 8.1 innings. His numbers overall, when you add in his relief work, it's basically league average strikeouts and walks, but you'd expect him to be worse than that as a starter, and he has been worse than that as a starter. So I would expect a fair amount of runs from a very strong Wiz lineup against him here. He just hasn't shown any reason to believe he's a shutdown arm in the rotation.
What do you think offensively between these two teams? Because my man Preston Tucker, he's been heating up 1 for 5, but that was a home run. I keep going back to him for my DFS must start. Is this Tigers offense, going to be able to heat up against Cuevas, or could Cuevas get another win?
Possibly, yeah. Tucker, he's got a 7-game hitting streak with 4 homers. Slightly better than Baek Ho-gong on the other side, who's got a 6-game hitting streak with 3 homers. Cuevas, like you said, his ERA is pretty good. 1 or fewer earned runs in 6 of his last 8 starts. 2 poor ones in there in the middle. But he's been good for most of his recent starts. Although if you look at those strikeout and walk numbers, over his last 5, it's 10 strikeouts to 13 walks, which you'd be very surprised to see that next to some pretty decent earned run totals overall. So it's definitely a bit shaky there. On the season as a whole, it's just a hair below league average in strikeout rate and a hair better than league average in walk rate, which translates to a pretty mediocre arm, just looking at those 2 things. And I'm definitely worried about those strikeout and walk numbers, despite not giving up a ton of runs lately. It does seem like something where he's due to give up quite a few, like that one you're highlighting there against the Wyverns a couple starts ago, where he gave up 5 in just 3 innings. It feels like one of those is coming again. Given that Tucker has hit well lately, I think there's a decent chance Tucker and Youngwoo Choi looks like, they don't have the easiest matchup for fantasy purposes by any means. Cuevas, when he's on, is pretty good, but I certainly wouldn't be afraid to use him. I don't think Cuevas has looked all that intimidating lately at all.
Yeah, especially when you consider Preston Tucker, like I said, 345 average over his last 7 on that hit streak. You mentioned Cuevas and you mentioned the Wyverns. His situation recently kind of reminds me of Ricardo Pinto, where he was doing fine, but then the runs started to come in a little later. I'm seeing 2 home runs really recently and 1 a little later. Is that long bomb problem maybe something that could come in later, that he's just getting a little lucky right now, and just when they're hitting it hard, they're hitting it at fielders?
Yeah, that definitely could be it. Just checking his home runs allowed over the course of the year. It is below average, not by a huge amount, but that seems like something that could come back to bite him. And given the way Tucker's hitting, I would not be at all surprised to guy to hit one out tonight.
Yeah, Cuevas facing off against Kim tonight. KT Wiz, Kia Tigers. Last thing, you got to, of course, mention this KT Wiz offense, and we take a look at their team page here on rotowire.com right here. KT Wiz. The ranking, actually, it's Kiwoom. It does look confused, 2 Ks. KT, though, fifth in runs per game right now, and got shut out 2 nights ago against the Twins. I mean, how are they doing right now? Because they put up 18 runs against the Dinos, and you think maybe they can continue that hot stretch against the Heroes and Twins, but like you said, they're letting you down right now.
Yeah, Mel Rojas has fallen off. Wouldn't say he's a bad hitter by any means, but he's had a whole lot of hitless games lately. What's it? 1, 2, 3, 4. It's basically every other game he seems to be going hitless in his last several. That's after a stretch when he was very cold for 6 to 8 games. He hasn't really heated up again, although he does have 3 homers in his last 6. So even when he's cold, he's not all that cold. Becco Gong's been the one picking up the slack lately. Like I said, six game hit streak with 3 homers. That power is very good to see from him because he had gone, I believe, over a month without a homer, which is a surprise for someone who has his pop. So I think there should be more than enough about this Wiz lineup to secure the win against Ki-Hoon Kim, given that Kim has shown very little. I think the Tigers' main path is if Cuevas' poor recent underlying numbers come back to bite him finally, and they put up a huge number. I think, though, unless this is a shootout, I would expect a Wiz victory.
Really? Okay. Not going against Preston Tucker. That's fine. That's fine. But 2 bubble teams going at it tonight. Just 1 win separating them in terms of the win column. And when you look at the standings, they're right there, 5 and 6. We'll have to see what happens after this 2-game mini series. You can't tell too much with just 2 games, but it will be an important 2 games for these teams. I'm going to think you're going to go with the over here just because of Kim bullpen day.
Yep. Even if it's not a bullpen day, he hasn't shown much. He hasn't even reached 5 innings in either of his starts yet. I feel pretty confident in the Wiz putting up a big number. I think there's also a decent chance the Tigers put up a big number, but since I'm more confident in the Wiz, I'm going to side Wiz. But I think the over is probably an even better play. And like you said, it's a huge series for these two. If the Tigers manage to sweep it, they're right back in the playoffs by a half game. So definitely a pair of key matchups for these two.
Yes, I think the Tigers might have a chance. I think a sweep might be difficult, especially if Mel Rojas Jr. kind of continues, to heat up a little bit. But it should be an interesting one here over, and you like the Wiz. So moving on, we actually have that's kind of the junior matchup now. Kind of the final matchup here, Bears and the Twins, an even better matchup between now the 3 and 4 instead of the 5 and 6. Now the 3 and 4 ranked teams, 2 wins separating them as well. hunting for that, 3 seed right now. Bears, Twins have been, right there in the conversation with the Dinos as some of the best teams earlier this year. Bears won against the Dinos after being shut out in game 1. Actually, just 2 runs. That's a shutout in terms of the Bears offense. But what are we thinking here with the Bears and Twins and another crucial series?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. These two teams share Janesville Baseball Stadium, and the Bears have won 8 of the 12 games between these two so far. But they've also been just incredibly mediocre for a long time. Over their last 51 games, they're just a single game over 500. They've just looked like a bubble team. A 500 team right now would rank you 8th in the league. So they've played like a team, they played essentially like the Latte Giants for the last 50 odd games. They've got a starter who's been decent since he's joined the rotation. He's got a 3.44 ERA in his 7 starts, Won Jun Choi. I believe he has 8 starts total. He made 1 spot start early in the year, and then he re-entered the rotation when Chris Flexen got injured. But so 3.44 ERA in those 7 starts, but a 1.47 WHIP isn't all that special. But his last couple starts only allowed 3 runs in 12 innings, so it's been trending in the right direction. Mediocre strikeout numbers overall, but doesn't walk a lot of guys. He looks like they may have found a legitimate mid to back end starter. Nothing special here, but they had been going through guys until they found just anybody who seemed worthy of sticking in the rotation. And I think that's him. I don't think he's necessarily somebody you're excited to see starting a playoff game, but he's probably their second best starter at the moment until Flexen's around. And when Flexen's back in the playoffs, he's probably the number 3 guy, which again isn't what they wanted. He started as like the number 7 starter or something, but the Bears got to be just happy to get anybody who's at least acceptable. Not at all excited about him. Wouldn't be thrilled to use him in fantasy against some strong hitters for the Twins, but he's at least something, and that's definitely good news for the Bears.
Yeah, I mean, looking at these numbers, 2 of his past 3 starts have been 6 innings, allowing 2 or fewer runs in 2 of those 3. But when you look at, who that's against, you're looking at Samsung twice, Lotte and SK, definitely not the Twins level of offense. When you look at what this team has done recently, they did have that one cold game against the Wiz, but they did win that one in that low scoring shootout, put up 6 runs last night, 8 runs earlier this week. Choi is probably going to have a tough time with them. What do you think on this Twins offense with Hyun-Soo Kim and Roberto Ramos, hitting in the heart of that lineup?
Yeah, the main thing is that Roberto Ramos seems to be Roberto Ramos again. I believe it's 9 homers in his last 19 games, which is among the hottest streaks of power that we've seen from anybody all year. So really good to see him back for the Twins. He had been really quite mediocre for quite a long time after looking like the obvious MVP over the first month or so. He's not necessarily all around back to that level. It's an OPS of 1061 over that 19-game stretch, which is quite good, though maybe lower than you'd expect when you hear that he's basically homering every other game. But certainly nothing to complain about there. They did lose Yun-Sung Che, who had been hot for quite a while for 2 to 3 weeks with a side injury, which is too bad. But they do have a decent amount of depth and some really great top-end talent in Hyun-Soo Kim and Roberto Ramos. Given also that both those guys hit left-handed, it's going to help them against a righty like Choi.
Yeah, Choi definitely going to struggle there with that right-on-left matchup. Bears offense exploded for 11 runs yesterday, but that 2 spot was a little concerning. How is beginning of the season MVP Jose Miguel Fernandez holding up right now with Jaelo in the top of that order?
I lost you for a second, but I think you're back. We're talking about the Bears offense.
Bears offense, Jaelo, Jose Fernandez, 11 runs yesterday, 2 runs the day before that. What do we make of this?
Yeah, they've got a lot of good, strong lefties in the core of their lineup. They also got Kyung-Min Her back from a calf issue to sort of extend that 1 through 6 quite strong. It's not the easiest matchup against Changyu Lim, but he hasn't been at his best lately, or at least he's had a couple poor ones lately. He has 2 starts in which he's allowed 5 earned runs in his last 4. But in the other 5 of his last 7, he's allowed 2 total earned runs. So he's been either awesome or quite bad for most of his last 7. But he's really had some walk issues of late, 18 walks in 19.1 innings over his last 4 starts. Seems like control issues could be popping up for him. Overall, it's a 10% walk rate now, which is a couple ticks above league average. But he strikes out enough guys that it's worked out. 22.4% is quite good for the KBO. So on the whole, he's been quite a good arm. But those walk issues lately certainly is a worry. It seems like he's losing the feel as the season goes on. And given that the Bears have such a strong lineup, at least 1 through 6, a ton of strong lefties in the heart of the order, I think they could give him more trouble again here.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one for Lim. Who are you going to lean towards now? Jose Miguel Fernandez or Roberto Ramos, 2 great sluggers. Who's going to come out victorious tonight?
I think I'm going to side Twins because Lim has been more frequently pretty good, even though I'm pretty worried about what he's done lately. But over the course of the season, Lim's been better than Choi. And that Twins lineup with Roberto Ramos hitting like he's supposed to. But I like both of the lineups quite a lot, and I'm nervous about both of the pitchers. So I would expect we see a decent amount of runs, even though this is taking place at the most pitcher-friendly park in the league. And even though both pitchers have pretty decent ERAs, I think we see some runs here.
Yeah, definitely with both ways that this offense has been performing, both these offenses, have been performing quite well. That's all 5 games for the KBO. You gotta love just the five games, 6 of the 7 days a week. Very manageable to kind of just understand and keep track of. What's our top 3 picks? Eric, some great pitchers, but also some pitchers that can give you boom or bust, especially in that Samsung Kiwoom game and what we were just talking about, Doosan against LG. What are we feeling?
Yeah, I think we're back to team against the Eagles and team against the Wyverns as the top 2 picks. Not necessarily by default because they've both been actually somewhat decent lately. But, man, when you get Dan Straley going against the Eagles, I think that's a pretty clear one. It should be able to say when you have Drew Rudzinski going against the Wyverns, that should be a clear one too. It hasn't been given the way he's played lately with 3 bad starts in his last 5. But it's still the Wyverns, and Jung-Hoon Park isn't anything special on the other side, despite some decent strikeout numbers. And the Dinos offense is still the Dinos. So those are the top 2 for me by quite some margin. The third one is going to be a lot closer because there's definitely David Buchanan could get a win for the Lions, even though I didn't necessarily pick it. Both lineups are pretty good in that Bears-Twins game. Both pitchers are a bit shaky. But for the third pick, I am going to go with the Wiz over the Tigers. I think even though William Cuevas has looked shaky, especially in those strikeout to walk numbers of late, there's no real reason to have any faith in Ki-Hoon Kim, who's been a reliever pretty much all year and did pretty much nothing in his 2 starts. And the Wiz lineup is one of the better ones in the league. So that's going to be number 3 for me. A bit uncomfortable that the starters for picks 2 and 3 have some shaky stuff in their resumes of late. But I still think those are the second and third best picks out there.
Yeah, I didn't think we'd be saying that Drew Rudzinski was going to be shaky against the Wyverns, but that's definitely something that's within reason tonight. Tell me why you didn't take the total in this KT Kia game. Becco Gowng, Mel Rojas Jr., you got to expect them. I know they've been cold, maybe a little more on Rojas' side recently, But with Tucker hitting the way he is, I would have to think they could hit 10 runs.
Yeah, that would be a pretty good one too. I wouldn't have that far behind. I guess it just comes down to, do you have faith in a Cuevas bounce back start? I don't really know. Do you count it as a bounce back start if he hasn't given up a ton of runs, but has some pretty sketchy strikeout and walk numbers? I think there's a decent chance that he pitches close to how you'd expect, which could be enough to keep that under. Certainly, if I were Tigers, I would be picking the over, because I think a Tigers pick implies that Cuevas had a bad game. I don't think there's much reason to expect a pitcher's duel and expect Ki-Hoon Kim to win it. I don't think he's shown that. So given that I'm siding with the Wiz, I'm a little bit less confident in the over, but I think that would also be a strong candidate for top three.
I get there, right? A little boo on Ki-Hoon Kim coming in just a couple starts this year. Overall, that's the entire slate there. Last thing, David Buchanan. I mean, any other thoughts on that matchup? I didn't think, he would get, blown up tonight, but it definitely seems like it's within reason. Any other facts or stats you can shed light on this actually pretty interesting matchup between the Lions and Heroes because of the starting pitching?
Yeah, I'm just really worried about what Buchanan did the last time he faced the Heroes. Got absolutely blown up by him, and I'm worried about that thumb. He always does the opposite of what I say, so I'm expecting now a perfect game from him. But I think given that we know he's blow up prone, the thumb, the past history with the Heroes last time out, has me pretty worried. He gives the Lions a better chance than they normally have, given their recent form and given how good the Heroes are. But I think there's a few too many reasons to worry here, which means definite perfect game, maybe even like a 12-inning perfect game for all I know.
You never know. You never know. We'll have to see. Crazier things have happened, of course, with the Dinos falling out of that number one spot in your power rankings a little while ago. So I don't know. That's all we got here. KBO Chats, Sam Pasco, Eric Halterman, back Monday, regular time. Of course, check out rotowire.com for all your KBO needs. We got the news, we got the injuries, everything that you need, and of course, some random ads that pop up as always. So, yeah, Eric, any other final words before we let the fans go?